Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I'm going to work on Bill's reel. Bill sent me in a Stradic CI4 Plus. It's the 3000 size Shimano reel, and he's telling me that he's got uneven line lay, and it's right. It's not that noticeable, but it is noticeable where it's gathering up top. He said the spool rides too high. Well, it's actually the line that's riding too high. The spool is riding too low. So what's happening is it's not coming all the way down to spool on the bottom, and it's gathering all that line up top. So typically what you have to do is you have to raise that spool up more so that during that stroke it can throw the line below. Now this is braided line. There could be two causes to it. One is it could be the washer issue, and the second one can be that there's bunching going on in that braided line underneath. So I'm not sure which. We're going to strip it off. I'll have to work on that to see if there's bunching underneath or if it's truly a matter of performance. So I did get started. I removed the drag adjuster, and I removed the spool. And Shimano just loves to give you a lot of grief in terms of tools. So I have a micro screwdriver bit set. Not a very expensive one. I think it was actually Home Depot, a 34-piece precision screwdriver set. And within that, they want you to use at least three. We'll find out if there's more. At least three of these bits to take this reel apart. So if you're going to get started on this reel, if you happen to have this reel, be aware that a screwdriver is not going to get it done, that you need these other bits. Well, the first one you need is to remove the collar on the adjuster here. So that collar comes out with a smaller one. This is a 0.9. There's a screw here that you have to line up, and you can remove the screw. I can do this one by hand, and that screw may have to come out all the way. It may not. It's always annoying, and it's a very small little set screw. So I try to keep it in that collar, but sometimes, well, you just have to take it out all the way. Let's just remove the thing. And be careful when you're working with this. It is a small piece, as I said, and you want to make sure that if it does drop, well, you keep your eye on it. All right, that's out all the way now. I'm going to put that into a parts tray to hold it safe. That parts tray comes over here. And we should be able to remove this whole collar now as a result. So take a look and take pictures along the way if this is where you are. There's a collar, there's a washer, and then there's a click mechanism below. Okay, so that will clear your shaft so that you can remove the rotor and get started on the rest of this. If you notice on this reel's bottom side plate over here goes under that rotor, so that rotor has to come out in order to remove this side plate. There's two screws here, and I always find it curious. I always wonder how these things are done at the factory, because whoever the technician is that putting this in now has to have 4 separate tools. They need the one to take this the set screw out of the shaft. They need the screws for the tie down here, which are Phillips head screws. And they need the nut for this. That's the other screw I was looking for. I put them in the side of a tray, and I keep those parts close at hand. This one says it's a non-traditional screw set, and we have a little water seal here so we can get that off. Put that in here as well. Non-traditional, it says unscrew with the arrow pointing this way. I don't know if it's easy or not to see, but then we have to remove the nut here. So we want to grab the deep socket, because that's the only way it's going to get done. I keep my sockets close at hand. and we'll be able to remove this. And again, it's going to be turned in a clockwise manner because this is a reverse thread on the screw. All right, once I take that off, I can remove the rotor now. Easier said than done. There we go. And when I remove the rotor, I'll put that little nut right in there. I'm going to set the rotors big enough and we can set that off to the side there. And then we can go ahead and get to this case. So there's a vibration ring here that comes off, and there's usually a screw that hides underneath there. I'm not quite sure if it is. It's a little rubber band, actually, kind of a thing. And it rides in a little shaft and a little inset here. I'm kind of doing this one from memory. If I run into trouble, I'll go get the schematic for it. Be careful, you don't want to tear up the band. It's pretty durable, but I guess if you're reckless enough, you can probably rip that up. And just walk it up. Once you clear that groove right here, just walk it up and off. Okay, that takes care of that particular system. And as I mentioned, I'm just going to check because there's a lot of times we have the screw up top there as well. But regardless, you can't get this piece off without removing that other section. All right, well, that was the small one of these bits. And I think we move up to the larger one of these bits now for the side. There'll be 3 of them. This little adjuster piece here gives you the ability to change your bits. And this one's not going to be removed without taking the bump guard off, so let's switch to the smallest of the bits. I don't know why they do that. So we've got, oh, maybe that's the middle of the bits. Have to drive me crazy. All right, this one comes out there. This bump guard should come off. There you go. That's going to go on my parts tray as well. I'm going to take the handle out and put that over to the side in the front there. So in this parts tray now I have that little set screw for the axle shaft. I have the bump guard and its little screw. And there's the other screw I was thinking had to come out somewhere along the line. And look at that one, yet another one. It's a kind of a flathead Phillips head hybrid, if you will. All right, well, that's not going to fit this one, is it? Of course not. I don't know why they do that, but they do. First time I worked on one of these, I didn't see the little connector up here, and it was driving me crazy. Well, there you go. We have 2 with that, and we have a different size one below. Mark where your screws go, so that when you go to work on these, you know where to put them back. Well, this one is a Phillips head. Very unusual down below here. And we know we have a small Phillips head on the other side, so I'm going to lay these 2 out and we're going to see if they're different sizes. I'm going to bet they are. Shimano, for some reason, likes to use all kinds of different screws and machine tools, and I don't know what the reason is. All right, well, we do. We have 2 different ones. It's a smaller diameter on this side than it is on the other, and those 2 I'm going to put opposite the 2 that go up top. Those are your case screws. So now we should be able to remove the case. Yep. I'm thinking maybe, just maybe underneath here there's yet another screw. This would be a good point where you would want to get the schematic, just to check. Oh, no, we can get it out. Okay, take that off. You don't need to, but so this is going to be removed now. Be aware that what we have here is a little trip ramp that goes in on reinstall. So I'm seeing an awful lot of movement in this shaft. I don't know if that's contributing to this or not, but there is some movement there, and well, if it's creating it, it doesn't seem to be like it's as bad as it could be bad, right? All right, well, we're trying to solve that problem with the line lay, right? I'm going to take this screw out. We'll be able to swing this over. What you need in reel repair is, well, as one fellow once told me, you need a sense of humor and a lot of patience. If you can do that, you can pretty much do any reel with a little bit of mechanical ability. All right, I'm going to take the pin out that's holding that, and I should be able to swing this over. Notice that I have a screw on the back here. I'm going to take that screw out so that I can remove the axle shaft. It looks like I need yet another driver for that. That's where the sense of humor comes in. Looks like we're going to be able to use a flat-bladed screwdriver for that. Well, that screw is in pretty tight, and at the risk of breaking that off, I'm going to work around that piece. Sometimes you just need to know what's best, and what's best right now is to leave that one alone. So there's a pawl over here that's on this piece. I'll flip that over and show you. Here's your pawl. It's almost identical to the pawls that are on the level line reels. It enables you to ride up and down on your track, and that's what's creating the oscillation. Well, we're going to take off the anti-reverse now. There's 3 screws. Don't touch the 4th one. The 4th one is holding that assembly together from what I recall. We may have to take it off. Knowing Shimano, we probably do. But let's take the 3 off that are holding the guard on. This is, again, this is about water sealing, water protection. Underneath we have the anti-reverse. See if that brings it up by itself. Yep, that'll bring the assembly up by itself. You don't, I don't like to play around with this too much. This is holding a cap on, that's your anti-reverse clutch. Inside of that, it's holding on a series of these ball bearings and springs. If you pull that out, all those ball bearings and springs, well, they just, let's say they have a mind of their own and leave it at that. All right, I'm just going to put this back. To the side, that'll go back in soon. This is an interesting one. This has got a double tier on it. There's a smaller diameter and a larger diameter. Understand when you go to put this back on that the wider diameter sits up top, otherwise it won't grab the roller assembly. We should be able to pull this up now and out. So we worked around the piece here where we were unable to get that screw out. When you're servicing the reel, take that bearing off. It appears to be a shielded bearing, so I'm going to just kind of douse that with some oil. I'm going to grab a paper towel here and wipe down this main gear, or the pinion gear. You can see how the older greases have just tarnished that, but otherwise it's clean. This whole reel is clean inside, so it's not a performance issue with the reel that we're working on. All right, that's completely clean. Let's talk about lubricating this reel then. So a lot of Teflon parts in here. And you don't have to grease Teflon. Teflon is self-lubricating. It's plastic. Or in the polymer field, or not a chemist or specialist in plastics, but it's self-lubricating. You don't need to touch those. So we'll go ahead and we're going to put that right back together here. You could put a little bit of grease onto where the inside race of that bearing is going to go as well. So we've learned one thing here is that old adage about skinning cats or whatever, right? One of the things you want to do is you don't want to force anything. And if you find yourself in a position where you have an alternative to work, and we did, we could remove that without removing that axle shaft, then go ahead and do that, only because the risk of damage is greater than the reward for that. All right, I have one stud up here, so I want to check underneath here and find out where that hole is for that alignment piece. It's over here. It appears that this was set up as having an override. This one does not have the override, but I'm thinking that's where this one goes. Yep, sits on real nice. We want to align the screw holes now, so that you can put these holes back in, the screws back in. And I remember what I said, you have a small side and a wide diameter. The wide goes up top. That's what's going to grab those roller bearings. I just want to make sure I could get that in before I put that on. So if you have any questions on this reel or any reel in particular, if you maybe you're working on one and you're stuck, it doesn't have to be this reel. If I can help you, I'll try to do that. Leave your questions in the comments section, and I will try to get back to you on that. If you have a reel that you'd like to see as a video, well, if you leave that request, if I can find the video, or if I can find that reel to do the video on, I will. And if you just have a question, maybe I've had a couple questions lately. One was my reel made. Well, I'm not a reel historian, but I do know and have access to some information, as well as just kind of living a life where I remember certain points where the reel was when it was introduced. I'll try and help you out there. All right, I am putting grease onto the worm gear. I'm not putting grease onto the Teflon. You can put a drop of oil on those Teflon pieces if you like. It'll help it run a little bit smoother. I don't typically use go to lubricate that. Just set the pawl inside of that worm gear. Now I'm going to go to the drive here. We're going to put that back in and thread it through the hole in that drive. Then we're going to move that up and into the little carrier seat there. That one side has a little rubber O-ring on it, which again is kind of going to seal against the water coming out. Just be aware of that. And now we're in there. Okay. We can take the main gear out. This is one of those halcyon gears, so they say. This is all very clean. If it wasn't clean, you would want to remove all of these pieces and parts and clean them up. There's only a little bit of grease here. I don't know if that's the Shimano method here in terms of when they build a reel to lightly grease it. But we're going to follow that pattern. We're not going to put a lot of grease onto the main gear. Put enough. But I think what happens with this is because of the way that the plastic pieces and parts are in there, you probably don't want to over grease it, risk that grease getting dirty and then grinding down those parts. All right, we can take this and put that right back into the case from whence it came. I'm going to put a little bit of grease onto the shaft here for the bearing. So we've just greased the main gear, oiled the bearing, put it back into the case, greased the shaft, and now we can bring this case over. And what you want to find now is you want to find that little ramp for the trip lever. When you go to merge the case, oops, this trip lever ramp is going to sit in the little slot like that. And then merge in with the slot on this side so that you have your trip lever ramp at kind of 12 o'clock if this is 6 o'clock. That's how this goes back on. All right, well, we got a whole bunch of alternate screws here, but we know that the two big screws go up top. And we know the one with the thinner diameter goes below, and then the one with the thicker diameter goes on the other side. Kind of interesting. So I'm not sure which one I left with. Probably this one. I'm going to use that to tighten down the top one. Come on over and do the other one here. Kind of funny, right? How many tools you need on this. Then we used a Phillips head for this one. That would actually do better with the micro driver. So I keep all my tools close at hand just because, well, you really don't want to put a reel like this down in pieces and parts. Go searching for tools only to know that you're going to have a problem with them later. Okay, that one's done, and then I use the flat driver for this. Go figure, right? Enough different pieces and parts. Stradics are nice reels. They have a great reputation. You saw why. It's a worm gear drive for the oscillation system. Very smooth operation to it. The Halcyon is a new, I think that's what it's called, Hagane. Hagane, not Halcyon. Hagane metal. It's a new alloy. I always think back to new alloys when you had some of the earlier ones, like Zephyr Light from Ocean City, made the Zephyr reel. It was made from Zephyr Light, which is an alloy. All right, we're going to just put that anti-vibration strap back on now. And it's just kind of repeating in the opposite of the way you took these pieces off. I put the skirt back on now. Now these got tabs. Please be careful when you're removing these that those tabs don't get broken, because if they do, well, you're going to have to go buy that whole piece. Line it up. This tab goes into the handle side. And you just need to be careful not to break it. There we go. And of course, we have one more screw that's yet a different size. I think I'll put that back in. If you're like Bill, if you have a reel that you would like serviced, maybe you're not up for it yourself. Bill actually wrote me a little note, said kind of beyond his abilities. That's no shame in that. But if you have a reel that you would like serviced and want to send it in to me, please send me a note to my email. I'll be happy to provide you with that service and repair information. Next on is the rotor. So the rotor, you do not need to remove the bail unless the bail's not working. You should oil the critical points. That would be the line roller and the seams of the bail arm. Just give it a couple of flips, make sure that it's working nicely. This is the little trip arm that's going to run up that ramp that we installed. And now we can go ahead and put that rotor back on. There's a bearing shield, good to know. And we can go set that. Now remember what happened here. This came out in a clockwise manner, so it goes back in a counterclockwise manner. And we did that with a deep socket because, well, we had to clear that rotor, or that axle shaft. One of the things you can do is bring that axle shaft all the way down. I don't think that's the right socket. There we go. And you want to reverse the throw on your ratchet. Tighten that up and go to your parts tray, find your cap and your screws. Next up was this little seal that belonged on top. And we have the shield, and what it's telling me is I got to tighten down the nut a little bit because the holes are not aligning enough. Let's see if we get them aligned now. Just got to play around with that. They're over tightened a little bit. So it's just an iterative type of a thing. Again, patience and a sense of humor will win the day. This is just the slightest back off. And once you straighten that up, go for your micro driver to get the screw. Just sit it up, and those of you that know me and screws know that sometimes these are adventures, but we can lock that in now. And this is a good point before you get much further. Spin that rotor, make sure everything's working properly. That's a nice smooth reel. And you saw why that's a nice smooth reel. Still a little bit of play in that shaft, but that appears to be normal in terms of the way that it all comes together there. All right, speaking of coming together, we're going to bring this a little click ratchet in to play. We'll set that down. And grab that set piece for the mounting of that screw. Time to get nervous here with that little screw. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just dip that carrier into a little bit of the reel grease, just so it acts as kind of a glue as we go ahead and put that back together again. Align that hole with the hole in the axle shaft. Again, this one kind of can be moved without using a driver. You just kind of use your hands to set it. But this is one of the more cooperative ones I've had. This is always kind of a grit your teeth moment with these Shimanos, but that is in now. There were 3 of these washers, and the manufacturer normally just gives you 3 as the adjusters. So the question here, I guess, becomes, do we really need an extra one, or is what we need more involved with the braid itself? Do we have bunching going on in that? Well, I'm not going to take the time on this video to strip all of this braid off and see what's going on underneath, but I will do that as the next steps. For now, as part of this service video, we're just going to put this back on. Well, let me show you how to do the drag washers inside of this, and then we'll put it back on. So there's a spring clip in here that's holding the drag washers in place. There's some dirt up top. That makes all the sense in the world because, well, top end drag systems take the brunt of the water under the button. So as much as they've done to kind of keep the bottom dry, the top still takes a beating, and well, you just need to make sure as you service these that you take that into consideration. These are felt drag washers. A lot of people question felt drag washers all the time, and they do so because something like this. There's a little bit of a rippling going on here because that felt washer's dried out, and a lot of folks get concerned because they will tear when they dry. So you need to make sure that the felt washers stay oiled or greased so that they have maximum flexibility. Well, we're going to do that here. We're going to take that felt washer and put that in the base. Just like that. And then I'm going to use fishing reel oil. That's my preference for keeping felt washers oiled and greased. Next up was this forked. It's got 4 points on it, 4 corners. Oh, probably out of focus. 4 corners there. That goes in, with that being the pressure point for that felt washer in the below section. We have another felt washer. Well, I guess we lock the spool in next. with that felt washer. There's one hiding underneath. I was wondering where that went. So the next one goes around those 4 points. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. We're going to make sure that it gets oiled. And we're going to put that, it's called an eared washer, the one with the 2 points. That goes on each side. I'm using a pick to align those points. Just going to have to play with it. Eventually you will get it in. Here's your last felt washer. Again, it goes to the outside of those 4 corners. If you're not seeing this on the camera, I apologize. It's not the easiest thing to kind of work through. There you go. We have the top one is now set in there. Do the same thing. And now we'll clean this top one. Everything else is clean. There's a raised section here that points upwards. There's the 4 slots which you align with the 4 posts on that bottom one. And that's your drag assembly, short of the retaining clip that goes in next. When you do that retaining clip, most of the time you can get this done by hand strength. Put the one corner in, pull the one side in and then the other. When you hear it snap in place, just check to make sure it's in the slot, and that's the servicing of your spool. I was just checking. Some of these have a ball bearing. This one does not. Some of them have a ball bearing as the spool. Okay. I just need my adjuster. So as I put the rest of this reel together here, I want to thank our first responders and essential personnel and everybody involved in keeping us safe during the pandemic. Your efforts truly are appreciated. Thank you for everything it is that you do in keeping us safe. All right, well, it seems to have tightened up a little bit. There's still some movement, but not a lot of movement. So I'm not sure, maybe that one side was just a little tight. Next up, I took this off when we were removing the case, so we'll put that cap back on. I grab the side here, put this on, we'll give it a test. A nice smooth reel. Nice smooth reel, all cleaned up and oiled. So, I'm not sure on the lay of this bail here. I think that may have been intentionally bent down to try and compensate for the spool line lay. I'm not sure on that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to check. Now we should be okay. I'm looking through the eyelet of this bail. I'll try and bring my awl across. Well, that's the bottom of the line. So kind of hard to see. Let's see if I can find something else here. Yeah, so here's the pin, and the pin is hitting this bail, or hitting the spool from the bottom of that line lay. So I think we have enough of the washers. I don't understand that, so I'm going to remove this and just see if that braid may have been bunched. So what happens in braid bunching is that the braid oftentimes is not backed onto a spool, and there's some initial slip of the braid, and eventually it will grab, but what it'll do is it'll have a coning effect like this has. So I'm going to say that we don't have an issue here with the shim washers. I'm going to say that the issue here is really on the way that this may have been mounted in. I'll do that off camera. There's no sense to try and do that here. But that's how you service the Shimano Stradic CI4 Plus fishing reel. And we've completely taken this apart. We've showed you that you certainly need a micro driver set and a whole bunch of bits and a wrench and a Phillips head screwdriver and a flathead screwdriver, and thanks to the engineers at Shimano for doing all of that maybe they get a commission on the sale of all the tools needed. I'm not sure. But at any rate, Bill, thanks for sending this one in. I'll take that line off, but I think you're okay with the shim washers that you have. I'll see if I can find one additional shim washer for you there. If I can, I'll make sure to include it. And if you continue to have that problem, well, you just need to add another shim washer to the bottom of that stack there under the spool. So, hope you've enjoyed that. If you liked it, please indicate that on the video. And for all, please stay safe, stay well, and stay watching. Have a great day. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle.